Razer have brought back their smaller Blade 14 gaming laptop, but now with AMD's Ryzen 5000 processors. This smaller machine packs quite a punch, so let's get straight into the review. I've got the highest spec configuration here with 8-core Ryzen 9 5900HX processor, Nvidia RTX 3080 graphics, 16 gigs of memory, and a 1440p 165Hz screen, so some pretty crazy specs for a 14-inch laptop. Razer also has lower spec models with the 3060 or 3070 graphics instead. You can check out examples and updated prices with those links down in the description. The Blade 14 has a smooth anodized black finish, and the whole thing is CNC aluminum. It feels seriously premium compared to most other laptops. The laptop alone weighs under 1.8 kilos or 3.9 pounds, then 2.6 kilos or 5.7 pounds total with a 230 watt power brick. It's quite thin and generally just all round on the smaller side. It's very portable. The 14-inch 1440p 165Hz screen has great color gamut, decent contrast, and FreeSync premium. It gets fairly bright too, above 350 nits at maximum, while 90% brightness was above 300. I measured average grey-to-grey response time at 8.75 milliseconds, so not below the 6 milliseconds needed for transitions to occur within the refresh window. That said, it's still the best result I've got for any 13 or 14-inch gaming laptop so far, slightly ahead of the Asus Zephyrus G14, though arguably within margin of error, but expect different results with the 1080p 144Hz option, which is slower. The total system latency was on the slower side, at least out of the small number of laptops I've tested so far. This is the amount of time it takes from a mouse button press to when a gunshot fires in CSGO as tested with Nvidia's LDAT. Mine had no noticeable backlight bleed, but this will vary between laptops and panels. There's a 720p camera above the screen in the middle, and it has IR for Windows Hello, which worked fine. This is what the camera and microphone look and sound like. This is what it sounds like while I'm typing on the keyboard. And this is what it sounds like with the fan set to full speed, which can only be done if the laptop's plugged in. It takes a long time for the fan to actually get to maximum. I was waiting for about a minute and a half, but you can still hear me okay over the fan noise. The keyboard has per key RGB backlighting, and all keys and secondary functions are lit very nicely, with about 15 levels of key brightness possible with the F10 and F11 shortcuts. And I like that holding the function key shows the keys you can interact with. Keyboard brightness can also be controlled through software, which offers a sliding scale between 0 and 100% with 1% increments. But I honestly can't tell if it's actually changing 1% at a time. There are also some built-in effects, or you can customize it further through the Chroma Studio. Typing was fine, though the key presses felt a bit shallow for me, but maybe I've been ruined by all the mechanical keyboard laptops I've tested lately. The power button is right next to delete and backspace, but an accidental press doesn't do anything. There are front-facing speakers on either side of the keyboard. The speakers sounded alright, perhaps a little above average for a gaming laptop with a little bass. They were clear enough, and I thought they got loud enough too. The Latencymon results were looking excellent. The glass precision touchpad is fairly large considering the smaller size of the laptop. I never had any issues with it getting in the way though. It clicks down anywhere and feels very nice. Definitely one of the better ones out there. The left has the power input at the back, USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A port, USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port, and a 3.5mm audio combo jack. The power cable is angled. You can make it block the USB port if you want, or alternatively, you could just not do that. The right also has USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C and Type A ports, HDMI 2.1 output, and Kensington lock, so no air exhaust vents on either side. Both of those Type C ports on either side of the laptop can be used to charge, and they both also offer DisplayPort 1.4 support. And both those Type C ports and the HDMI port connect directly to the Nvidia RTX 3080 graphics. So connecting an external screen will give us a speed boost in games, and I'll show you this a bit later. The Razer logo on the back lid lights up green, and you can either set it to breathing, static, or off. I've had it on breathing throughout this review. Keyboard flex wasn't too bad. The metal body felt fairly solid during regular use, but just doing this, you can see how easy it is for fingerprints to occur. Fortunately, the smooth finish is easy to clean with a microfiber cloth. Lid flex was only minor due to the solid metal lid, though while doing this, I did notice that the laptop could move a bit on my desk. But it is a lighter laptop, and generally weight helps reduce this. Although the rubber feet run along most of the top and bottom, they didn't feel super grippy. The bottom panel otherwise just has air vents over the intake fans. It's hard to tell here, but the mesh looked finer compared to other laptops with less metal and more holes. The back section also seems to be where air is exhausted, as well as below the screen. There's nothing otherwise on the back, while the front just has the power LED on the right hand side, and the middle has an indent for you to easily get your finger in to open the lid. Getting inside requires removing 10 small TR5 screws, and the bottom panel was very easy to pry open using the tools linked in the description. Inside we've got the battery down the front, single M.2 storage slot just above on the left, and Wi-Fi 6E card on the right. That's all there is. The vapor chamber cooler is up the back, and 16 gigs of RAM is soldered to the motherboard. That's the only option available, no 32 gig option. At least the secondary memory timings look decent, faster than the memory used in both the Lenovo Legion 5 Pro or Asus Strix G15 Advantage for instance. The Blade 14 has a 61.6 watt-hour battery, and I was able to boost the battery life in the YouTube playback test by about 40 minutes simply by changing the screen's refresh rate down from 165Hz to 60Hz. I've tested both because the option is presented clearly through the Razer software, but unlike Asus laptops, the change isn't automatic when you unplug. Also, just a quick side note, anytime you change the resolution in Windows, the refresh rate automatically goes back to 60Hz, which seems like a bug. Here's how battery life stacks up compared to others. It's actually lasting a little longer than the Blade 15 Advanced with larger battery just below it. Though that said, the smaller Blade Stealth 13 is just ahead of the 14 owing to the lower end specs. Let's check out thermals next. Again, we've got the vapor chamber cooler with 2 fans for cooling. The Razer Synapse software lets us change between these performance modes. We can either enable balanced mode and then optionally customize the fan speed, or we can instead use custom mode to get more granular control over the CPU and GPU, with 4 performance levels for the CPU and 3 for the GPU. For some reason, this means you can't max the fans out in custom mode, only in balanced. And on battery mode, it will automatically run in balanced mode with no fan control. The following overclock also gets applied to the GPU when it's set to high mode in the custom settings. These are the power levels and clock speeds advised by Razer for these different modes. Again, there's quite a bit of customization possible here, so let's see how these different modes actually perform. Now there's a lot of data here as I probably tested too many configurations. Let me explain. The idle results down the bottom weren't bad. I've run stress tests with both the CPU and GPU loaded up to represent a worst case, as well as playing an actual game. In balanced mode, setting the fan to max speed was able to lower the temperatures by a reasonable amount, whether gaming or under stress test. The temperatures rise up with both the CPU and GPU set to low, then medium, high, then boost plus high. Using a cooling pad, link down in the description, in the highest boost plus high mode was able to help out a fair bit in the stress test. But it made less of a difference with this particular game. These are the clock speeds from the same tests. Best case in the stress test, the 5900HX is getting to around 3.9 GHz on average over all 8 cores, though the game is able to get up to 4.2 GHz. But this will vary based on the game. The GPU clock speeds increase when the GPU is set to high mode, as this applies the previously mentioned overclock, but it also boosts the power limit too. With the GPU set to high, it's able to run up to 90 watts in these combined CPU plus GPU workloads. With the CPU idle though, the RTX 3080 can sustain 100 watts. Best case, we're seeing 45 watts on the CPU and around 90 on the GPU. Not too bad for these specs I'd argue, given the smaller 14-inch size. Here's how the different modes perform in Cinebench R23, a CPU-only workload with the GPU now idle. The highest boost mode up the top gives us the biggest improvement compared to the others. It's doing reasonably well when compared against others when considering the smaller size. Despite the Blade 14 having the 5900HX, it's not that far ahead of the 5900HS in the Asus Zephyrus G14, another 14-inch gaming laptop, though both were ahead of the larger Alienware M15R5. The performance drops down quite a bit when running on battery power. Single-core performance in particular is now one of the lower results, while multi-core is at least able to beat a few other larger 8-core laptops. The keyboard area is in the mid-30s in the center. The whole thing feels a little warm as it's metal and conducts heat, but not uncomfortable. Stress tests running are warmer and just below 50 degrees Celsius in the middle. More than I'd like, but not too bad. Setting the fans to max speed lowered the temperatures by a few degrees, but the WASD area was still cold. I'll just quickly skip through the results with both the CPU and GPU set to low, medium, and high, as there honestly isn't too much change. And then same with high plus boost as the fans increase alongside these changes. Let's have a listen. The fans were still audible when idling in the default balanced mode. Balanced mode was a little quieter compared to setting both the CPU and GPU to medium, while max fan in balanced mode was about the same as setting both the CPU and GPU to high and above in the custom settings. Now let's find out how well this configuration of Razer's Blade 14 gaming laptop compares against others in games, but use these results as a rough guide only, as they were tested at different times with different drivers. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was tested with the game's benchmark, and I've got the Blade 14 highlighted in red. It's actually scoring faring the same as the Blade 15 Advanced from last generation with 8-core Intel CPU and RTX 2080 Super graphics. Quite a good result considering its smaller size. Now at the same time, the far cheaper HP Omen with lower Ryzen 7 5800H and RTX 3070 is ahead of it, but consider that the Blade 14 is 18% faster than the new top-spec Asus Zephyrus G14, while also being smaller in every dimension. Impressive stuff. I've tested Battlefield 5 in campaign mode at ultra settings. The new Blade 14 is again beating the last-gen Blade 15 Advanced here. The 1% lows in particular are much improved and one of the better results recorded out of all laptops. The average frame rate is extremely close to the larger Asus Zephyrus G15 with similar wattage 3080, so another great result for the smaller Blade 14. This time the Blade 14 is reaching 24% higher average FPS compared to the G14. And yeah, this top-end spec of Blade 14 probably costs more, but I think it's still interesting to see what's now possible in 14 inches. Far Cry 5 was tested with the game's benchmark at max settings. This game typically depends more on the processor, and this time the Blade 14 was just 6% ahead of the G14. The Blade 15 Advanced is also much further ahead now compared to the previous two games, but this title tends to favor Intel processors, so that may be why. The Blade 14 is just 4 FPS behind the smaller 13-inch X13 with 3080 eGPU, and that's not a cheap setup either. I've also tested the Blade 14 in way more games at both 1080p and the native 1440p resolution in this video over here, so check out that one if you want to get a better idea of how well the Blade 14 performs in games. I didn't really mind playing games at 1080p at the smaller 14-inch size. If I went out of my way to look for it, yeah, it did look a bit more blurry compared to 1440p, but overall I thought it was still alright. But this will be personal preference, of course. But realistically, with the RTX 3080 option, you probably don't need to go down to 1080p anyway, but maybe you might need to do that for a bigger speed boost with the 3060 or 3070 options. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we can improve gaming performance by attaching an external screen, as this will bypass Optimus and the integrated graphics. We're looking at a 7% boost to average FPS in Shadow of the Tomb Raider with this simple change. So not quite as big compared to some other laptops I've tested, such as the Asus Strix G15 Advantage Edition, but hey, still an easy way to get some additional performance out of the laptop. Esports titles like CSGO that hit much higher FPS would see bigger gains here. Generally, the higher the frame rate, the more the integrated graphics acts as a bottleneck. Here are the results from 3D Mark for those that find them useful. Now for some creator tests. Adobe Premiere was tested with the Puget Systems benchmark. The Blade 14 is holding up quite well compared to larger and thicker machines, though it's one of the lower results I've got for a 3080 laptop, but not too far behind some others. It's in the same position in Adobe Photoshop out of the same selection of laptops. This test typically depends more on the CPU than GPU, and it's near a few other 5900HX laptops, though there are also some like the Legion 7 that scored much higher. DaVinci Resolve is more GPU heavy, but the Blade 14 is again in the exact same spot out of this laptop selection. It's the lowest 3080 result that I've got, but only just slightly behind the Zephyrus G15 just above it with a similar wattage 3080, though that is a bigger machine. I've also tested SpecView Perf, which tests out various professional 3D workloads. The 1TB NVMe M.2 SSD was doing well for the reads and alright for the writes. There's just the one M.2 slot, so if you want to upgrade storage, you'll either need to clone or reinstall Windows. The BIOS has fairly standard options, nothing really special worth noting, and it does have TPM 2.0. I tried to boot an Ubuntu 21 Live CD, but as soon as it completed booting, it kept restarting itself and I wasn't able to properly test it. Now let's discuss pricing. This will change over time, so refer to those links down in the description for updates. These are the prices in US dollars that Razer provided. So $1,800 for the entry-level model, $2,200 for the middle 3070 option, while my top-end configuration is $2,800. It's definitely not cheap, but that's always the case when it comes to technology with high specs and a smaller footprint. I think the 3060 model with the 1080p 144Hz screen is going to be harder to recommend. Razer is saying it has a 20 millisecond response time, so similar to the 2020 G14, and a lot of people found that to look blurry in fast-paced games. But if you're using an external monitor for gaming, then that would be less of a concern. Overall, I'm quite impressed with what Razer has been able to fit in a 14-inch size. There are definitely compromises, but regardless, this still appears to be the best 14-inch gaming laptop that you can buy today, and that's reflected by the higher prices. The main issue for me personally is the 16 gigs of soldered memory. Yeah, I get that not being able to upgrade it is probably required for the thinner design, but it would have been so much better if they also had a 32 gig option at this price point. The software has a lot of options for how lighting and performance modes should behave differently on battery life. It would have been cool if this also extended to the screen's refresh rate, as chances are you don't need 165Hz on battery power. At least having that as an option would have given us more battery life should we want to use it. But I guess for now, this is only a feature that Asus laptops have. Now, Razer is claiming that the Blade 14 is the fastest 14-inch gaming laptop, and I don't think they're wrong. It's spec'd higher than the Asus Zephyrus G14 while also beating it in pretty much every test and also coming in at a smaller size. Now, I will be comparing the Razer Blade 14 against the Asus Zephyrus G14 very soon, so if you're new to the channel, then get subscribed for that upcoming comparison, as well as for future gaming laptop reviews like this one. Come and join me in Discord and get behind the scenes videos by supporting the channel on Patreon. And kinda hard to point with a laptop, come and check out some of my other videos over here next.